Welcome to the Pre-Application Information Session webinar for the Grants to Improve the Criminal Justice Response, also referred to as ICJR. My name is Jason Patry, and I'm a Grants Management Specialist here at the Office on Violence Against Women, referred to as OVW. The ICJR unit is convening this pre-application information session to go over the FY 2025 Notice of Funding Opportunity for the ICJR program. A quick note about terminology. OVW no longer uses the term solicitation for published funding opportunities. We now use Notice of Funding Opportunity, commonly referred to as the NOFO, to be consistent with other federal agencies. Throughout the presentation, we will be referring to the NOFO. The purpose of this session is to provide information regarding the ICJR program NOFO. We will highlight a few key points in the presentation. However, it is not the intent, nor is there sufficient time to go over every aspect of the NOFO and the ICJR program. All applicants are responsible for reading the FY 2025 ICJR NOFO and the OVW NOFO Companion Guide to ensure you submit complete applications. It will be helpful to have the ICJR NOFO in front of you as a point of reference during this information session. The NOFO was reposted on May 6, 2025 as a revised NOFO. Use only the current version of the NOFO. Please keep track of the noted deadlines as there are multiple. If you don't submit the required SF424 and the SFLLL in grants.gov, then you cannot submit the rest of the application in JustGrants. Additionally, it can take around a week for the grants.gov registration to work its way through the system, so it's important to submit documents earlier rather than later. Organizations that have applied for funding previously must ensure that their accounts with sam.gov and grants.gov, as well as JustGrants, are active and up to date. Remember, sam.gov registration requires an average of 2 to 3 weeks, and as I mentioned, grants.gov registration can take about a week. We begin with an overview of the ICJR program. The Grants to Improve the Criminal Justice Response is one of the oldest and largest OVW discretionary grant programs. The ICJR program is focused on helping governments and nonprofits improve their response to OVW's 4 recognized crimes. Building relationships and partnerships from a coordinated community response is fundamental to the work of the ICJR program. The core goal of the ICJR program is to promote victim safety and to hold offenders accountable. There are 5 groups of eligible applicants for the ICJR program listed here. For units of local government, we are referring to the executive branch of local government. For example, a mayor's office in a city or the county commissioner's office for a county. This does not refer to agencies within that local government, such as police departments or prosecutors' offices or sheriff's offices. These entities are not eligible to apply, but can be project partners. OVW statute defines victim service providers as nonprofits, non-governmental organizations. These are often organizations in your community that serve survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Victim service providers cannot be government entities. They must be community-based, or they will not be deemed eligible to apply as the lead applicant. For example, this victim service provider could be your local domestic violence nonprofit organization, but it cannot be an Office of Victim Services in a government organization, such as a prosecutor's office. Please note that when you apply, you will be applying as one of 2 types of applicants. That is either new or continuation. You are considered new if you have never received funding under the ICGR program, or if your most recent award closed any time before February 27th, 2025. As a coordinated community response is at the heart of the ICGR program, every applicant must apply with a required partner. These are the people you have discussed working with in the who will implement section of your proposal narrative, and who will be signing your MOU or letter of commitment. For government entities, your required partner is the victim service provider or coalition. Remember, this partner must have a primary function to provide direct services to victims. They also cannot be another government organization, even if that organization provides victim services. The partner must be based in the community and provide services to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and or stalking survivors. Victim service organizations or coalitions must partner with a government entity. This cannot include courts, but it can include states, tribal governments, or units of local government. This also, as mentioned previously, for eligibility requirements, the government must be the executive office of that government. So again, for a state, that would be the governor's office. For a city, the mayor's office, county commissioners. These offices cannot be agencies within the unit of local government or the government agency, as with the eligibility requirements, such as police departments or prosecutors' offices. Now, those police departments and prosecutors' offices, again, can be partners on the project, but they cannot be the required partner. Remember, you must have your required partner signed onto your MOU. MOUs without the required signatures may receive deductions on their application scores. Successful grantees tend to focus on quality and not quantity in terms of the purpose areas they apply to, typically 3 to 4 purpose areas, which allows projects to focus their project narrative, their goals and objectives. And for victim service providers only, apply to purpose areas in which you are eligible in order to avoid any deductions on your application. A new element this year is for applicants who intend to apply to provide legal assistance. They must already have a legal apparatus in place or partner with an organization who does. Up to 30% of project activities can be dedicated to legal assistance. Applicants who plan to implement direct legal services must submit the delivery of legal assistance certification, which is something we will discuss later in the presentation. OVW statutorily prioritizes applicants that propose to implement activities that respond to sexual assault in their community. Each year for the past 4 years, the percentage of activities and budget that must be implemented to meet the priority has increased, reaching 45% this year. As such, to be eligible for additional funding, applicants must spend at least 45% or more of their project activities on addressing sexual assault. If successful in receiving an FY 2025 award, applicants may be eligible to receive up to 24 months of non-competitive additional funding. Activities that address sexual assault include, but are not limited to, improving policies and procedures for sexual assault investigations, hiring sexual assault nurse examiners, and improving interviewing processes for sexual assault investigations. Applicants proposing to address one or more of these statutory priority areas must discuss how they meet one or more of those priority areas in the proposal narrative, and identify the statutory priority areas addressed within the summary data sheet section of the application. By addressing any of the statutory priority areas, an applicant will receive special consideration during the application review process. Please note, it is not required to address a statutory priority area in order to be considered for funding. Each year, leadership identifies priority areas for each grant program. These priority areas will be given special consideration for implementation. There are 3 priority areas for which ICGR grantees could be eligible to implement, which are listed on this slide. If you intend to meet a priority area, ensure that it is clear in your project narrative what steps will be taken and by whom to meet the stated priority. Please note that there are more out-of-scope activities than in the past. Please read the NOFO to review all existing activities that are out of scope and ensure that your project is fully in compliance with the requirements. Applicants proposing any activities that are out of scope may have points deducted during the review process or may be removed from consideration. OVW also does not fund any activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Please ensure that your application does not include any such activities, or you may receive a point deduction or even disqualification from consideration. The budget should not include any of the following unallowable costs. Inclusion of unallowable costs can lead to point deductions of an application or even removal from consideration. And we're going to discuss the core elements of the ICGR application. These are the core required components of your application package. We will discuss these components in greater detail over the next few slides. Please note that applications must adhere to the following technical requirements on this screen. Points will be deducted from applications who fail to meet the formatting and technical requirements. We tend to see a few common formatting mistakes that we would like to help you all avoid. For one, applications may be missing page numbers, be single-spaced, or may go over the 20-page limit for the proposal narrative. These are all formatting errors. Peer reviewers will not read beyond 20 pages, which means any content over those 20 pages will not be considered. Please be sure to include headings and subheadings that correspond to the sections identified in this section of the NOFO. Including these headings helps reviewers read, follow, and score your applications accurately. They also can help you ensure that you address all of the required application components. Before we discuss the proposal narrative in more detail, I want to note that you will also be required to submit a proposal abstract, which is a short summary of the proposed project, and it's submitted in JustGrants. It will not be scored, but will be used throughout the review process. Let's take a minute to talk about the proposal narrative. The proposal narrative includes 3 sections. The purpose of the proposal section, this is worth 20 points. The what will be done section, which is worth 45 points. And the who will implement section, worth 15 points. The first part, the purpose of the proposal section. In this section, this is your opportunity to really introduce your project. We want you to think about your community and your service area and who is most impacted by domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Think about who you are serving. What are the challenges you face? Do you have trauma-informed investigations? Are protection orders being enforced? What do you want to achieve with this project? The purpose of the proposal sections gives you the opportunity to let us know why you want to work on an ICGR funded project. The next section is the what will be done section. This is where you describe your plan to implement the project. In response to your challenges that were noted in the previous section, outline your goals and objectives for the project. When the proposal when the NOFO says to be specific, we really want you to be specific. Provide measurable goals, objectives, and activities. These goals, objectives, and activities can mean anything from tracking how many survivors you served to how many cases were investigated and went to trial. Please do not just tell us that you will improve services for survivors, for example, but show us how you plan to do that. The last part of the proposal narrative is the who will implement section. In this section, consider who is working on this project. What is their experience? Have they worked in the field of domestic violence or sexual assault, and for how many years? Are they experienced in providing training? Do they have specific kinds of training that are necessary to do this job? Who are your partners, and what kind of experience do they bring to the table? Most importantly, are they the right partners to implement the project you've envisioned? The next section of the application is your budget. The budget worksheet and narrative should include all of the items listed here. There are a few particular areas we want to draw your attention to today. First, please make sure your budget covers the entire 36-month project period with budgeted activities. You will be asked to amend your budget if it does not span the full required length. Second, ensure there are no surprises in your budget. This means activities included in the what will be done section of your proposal narrative and the partners described in the who will implement section match the costs in the budget. You will be providing calculations, and with these calculations, please show your work. For example, if you provide health insurance or a 401k plan, tell us the exact percentages used to get to the amount that you are requesting. One benefit of being an OVW grantee is your access to OVW training and technical assistance providers. These are national experts in the field working with law enforcement, prosecutors, the community-based victim service providers, and more. We ask you to set aside funds to travel to training, but also to bring relevant training directly to your community. And don't forget to share these opportunities with your project partners. We want to ensure that all victims and communities are provided with the services that they need. We ask you to set aside funds to ensure there are resources available for accessibility purposes. This often includes translation of materials and interpretation services. Please make sure you are setting aside enough funds to serve all of the populations that you work with within your community. Next, we have the Memorandum of Understanding. This is your agreement with partners to implement the project. All applicants, with few exceptions, must submit an MOU following the requirements listed here. Note that the authorized representative is the person within your organization that has the legal authority to enter into a grant within the federal government. This may be different from the chief executive officer who needs to sign your certifications of eligibility, which is something we're going to get to here in a moment. For units of local government, the victim service provider is your required partner, and they must sign the MOU. For victim service provider, your government partner is your required partner, and they must sign the MOU. OVW does accept electronic signatures. A letter of commitment is another form of a partnership agreement that signifies support of a project for entities who cannot sign a formal MOU. For example, courts unable to submit an MOU may submit a letter of commitment in its place. Tribal governments or tribal victim service providers may also submit a letter of commitment from each partner organization. If funded, tribal entities will be expected to submit a signed MOU as a deliverable post-award. This is important. If you are not a court, a tribal government, or a tribal victim service provider, you are the lead applicant, you are still required to submit an MOU. This slide may not apply to you. Now we will turn to the ICGR application information section of the NOFO. Project budgets may vary from $500,000 to $1 million, depending on the project's type and the population size. For statewide projects, applicants will need to ensure that their activities cover the entire state and not a few cities or counties within the state. Applicants must upload a service area map and include population size from the most recent credible government source. OVW will only provide funding for the population size of the community served. Additionally, any application that addresses the sexual assault statutory set-aside discussed before may apply for up to an additional $200,000. Please note that the sexual assault set-aside is at 45%, meaning at least 45% of project activities must be focused on combating sexual assault in order to be eligible. There are two new certifications when applying for an ICGR award. There is a certification regarding out-of-scope activities, where applicants must attach a letter to OVW's director signed by the authorized representative certifying that grant funds will not be used for out-of-scope activities listed in the NOFO. Please note that nothing in this certification prohibits recipients from serving all eligible victims as required by statute, regulation, or award conditions. Additionally, state, local governments applicants who are looking for priority consideration in the application can submit a certification affirming their compliance with federal immigration law, including 8 U.S. Code Section 1373. To be eligible for this priority, an applicant must submit a letter signed by the applicant's authorized representative. As an applicant, it is your job to ensure that you are in compliance or will come into compliance with all required certifications. Failure to do so may impact your ability to receive an ICGR award. There are 3 certifications of eligibility that are required for all applicants, except for courts, as shown on the screen here. Please note that these certifications of eligibility must be signed by the Chief Executive Officer of the state, unit of local government, or tribal government. A Chief Executive Officer means the highest official of the state, unit of local government, or tribal government. For example, a governor or a mayor. Other government officials, such as district attorney or attorney general, are not considered the chief executive officer. A victim service provider or state coalition cannot sign the certifications of eligibility. Their government partner must execute and sign those certifications. State or local courts must submit a court's certification of eligibility. Information on the court certification can be found on page 32 of the NOFO. The first certification is the ICGR General Certification of Eligibility. A sample ICGR General Certification of Eligibility is available on OVW's website. Please be sure to use the exact statutory language. Otherwise, the ICGR General Certification of Eligibility will need to be revised. The second certification is the Prosecution Certification of Eligibility. The Prosecution Certification has 3 key components as listed here. If you need to come into compliance, you must ensure that you will meet the requirements as noted in the certification before the end of your award. Failure to do so can jeopardize access to future funding. The prosecution certification of eligibility is required for all applicants except for court applicants. Only the government partner may execute and sign this certification, and it must be signed by the Chief Executive Officer. A sample prosecution of certification of eligibility is available on OVW's website, and please be sure to use the exact statutory language, otherwise it will need to be revised. Lastly, there is the minor certification of eligibility. If you need to come into compliance, you will only have until the end of the next legislative session. This means, for example, if your state legislature meets in January and its session ends in September, you will have until September to come into compliance. If you do not, your funds will be frozen until you are able to come into compliance. The minor certification of eligibility is required for all applicants except for court applicants. And again, only the government partners can sign this certification. A sample of the minor certification of eligibility is available on OVW's website, and please be sure to use the exact statutory language, otherwise it will need to be revised. States and units of local government applicants are required to submit some form of documentation for the HIV certification requirement. Whether that is a certification notifying OVW that you are in compliance or an exemption letter notifying OVW that you do not have the ability or authority to prosecute the relevant cases. These certifications must be submitted by the authorized representative. And please note that although required, the HIV certification is not one of the 3 certifications of eligibility. For applicants who plan to include legal services in their proposal, no more than 30% of project activities may be dedicated to legal services in an ICJR award. The delivery of legal assistance certification is not a certification of eligibility, but it is required for applicants proposing to implement legal services. A sample delivery of legal assistance certification letter is available on OVW's website, and please be sure to use the exact language. Otherwise, the delivery of legal assistance certification letter will need to be revised. The OVW Grants Financial Management Division, or GFMD, is involved in reviewing applications. GFMD reviews the following information required of all applicants. The pre-award risk assessment, which is submitted directly in JustGrants and found beginning on page 48 of the NOFO, includes 11 questions with multiple parts to each question. Be sure to respond to all parts of each question. The summary data sheet consists of 22 questions, many with multiple parts. Be sure to respond to all parts of each question. See pages 50 to 55 for a complete list of the questions. Applicants must upload the required documents as budget financial attachments in JustGrants. There's a sample disclosure letter available for you, and please review all questions for the pre-award risk assessment, the applicant questionnaire, and the summary data sheet to ensure you have provided the required information. GFMD has worked to develop a detailed webinar presentation on how to assist applicants in developing a budget to submit with their OVW applications. They want to help reduce any challenges you may have or face with the budget and make it clear what they look for when reviewing your budget. This webinar provides some insights as to what OVW financial staff considers during their review. The webinar can be found on the OVW website under the Budget Information section. Additional resources, including 2 CFR Part 200 and the DOJ Financial Guide, can be found here. We know that there can be a lot of information to process. So if you have questions about the GFMD information discussed or when reviewing the NOFO, please feel free to contact the GFMD Help Desk. They can be reached at 1-888-514-8556 or via the email at ovw.gfmd.doj.gov. Excuse me, ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Next, we will discuss some application submission tips and resources. The ICJR NOFO is available on the OVW website. Applicants have multiple ways to look up the funding opportunity on grants.gov to begin their application process. Read the NOFO carefully to understand all of the steps required and to submit a complete application and the required time to complete each step. Leave yourself sufficient time to engage relevant partners needed to prepare and submit your application. And we recommend that applicants begin these processes as soon as possible, but no later than the dates suggested in the NOFO. There are 2 key steps for applying for an ICJR award, noted here, including submitting on grants.gov and on Just Grants. Please note that if you experience technical difficulties that prevent you from submitting an application on Just Grants, review the OVW policy for applicants experiencing technical difficulties found on page 41 of the NOFO. Applicants must reach out to ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov immediately to notify them of the issue. Throughout the process, you will need to maintain documentation of your communication with the help desk as you resolve your issue. Then please email the ICJR unit at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov. Email the complete application, a detailed description of your tech problems, your contact info, and UEI number, and please do so before the application deadline. You are only able to submit an application via email if there is a documented technological issue that prevents you from submitting the application in Just Grants. And please do not email the application earlier than 4 hours prior to the deadline. Cases of severe inclement weather or natural or man-made disaster are the only circumstances under which OVW may accept applications after the deadline. Applicants must email the ICJR unit at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov to notify us about the disaster, when it occurred, and its impact on submitting the application. If an applicant is still unable to email the application, then please, if the applicant is able to email the application, please do so. If not, contact OVW as soon as communications are restored. Listed here are all of the mandatory requirements when submitting your ICJR application. Please be sure to include and check off all of these components when working to submit your application. It is beneficial to begin working on these components, the components that require different organizations or individual support, such as the MOU or the ICJR certifications of eligibility, and to work on these as soon as possible. Listed here are all of the requirements that may be required depending on the circumstances surrounding your project. Please read the NOFO carefully to determine if you are required to submit these additional documents. It is beneficial to begin working on any components that require different organizations or individuals' support, like the prosecution or minor certification of eligibility, and to do so as soon as possible. So let's discuss a few tips that help you submit a successful application. First, we recommend that you start early. Some steps, such as obtaining a unique entity identifier or UEI number, or registering with sam.gov or grants.gov, may take several days to complete. So please start with those as soon as possible, as you cannot apply without them, even if you have a fully completed application package. SAM registration takes on average 2 to 3 weeks, and grants.gov can take up to a week. Second, review and re-review the application checklist. Note that OVW will not contact applicants for missing items. Applicants that do not include the proposal narrative, the budget detail worksheet and narrative, and the memorandum of understanding and/or letter of commitment will not be considered for funding. Third, please do not submit test applications to see if grants.gov or JustGrants works. Also, avoid submitting an application multiple times. Finally, ensure your application is completed and final before hitting the submit button at the end of the application in JustGrants. Lastly, assume that your reader knows nothing about your organization. The best applications tell the story of your project. They clearly describe the needs of the community, provide clear, actionable goals to address those needs, and demonstrate the experience and capacity of the project partners to achieve those goals. Strong applications show reviewers how you plan to implement your ideas and goals and describe how survivors will benefit from your proposed project. Here are links to a couple other helpful resources, including general OVW research for applicants and the OVW application companion guide. These resources provide sample forms, tips, financial policies, and more relevant information that will assist you with the submission of your application. Here is contact information for the various groups that can help you with your application. Note that email is preferred, but please do not wait to contact us with questions, as inquiry volume can be high during the open period. Just a few important reminders. Important deadlines are upcoming, as we noted previously, and you find in the NOFO. Please make sure you are aware of the deadlines and prepare your application with sufficient time to get it uploaded into JustGrants. As always, if you have questions, please contact us and we will get back to you as soon as we can. That is our pre-application webinar. Thank you for taking the time to watch. We look forward to reviewing your applications.